Morning, Brad.
How are you?
Well, not too bad, all things considered. We got a
There
minute
you go.
to go. It's been one of them mornings.
Yeah.
At least Coco took a big dump.
Well,
Outside.
good for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still getting that girl trained.
That sometimes is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Handful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to try to put this out to people
Okay.
just in case somebody wants to be on here.
Okay. Well, next time we do one on whatever form you might want to do one next time, probably send an email out a couple of days in advance.
Yeah. If I were forward thinking, I would do that.
Yeah. Let's see. So we got through special assessments, title and conveyance,
We're on
inspections.
section number 8.
Number 8. Very good. Inspections. There we go.
All right. We'll see if anybody pops in there.
Okay.
Let me get my stuff pulled up. Get started.
I'm just experimenting with layout right now. Do you have to be out of here at exactly 9:30, or if we run over a little bit, you got
No.
time?
No, I'm
Let
good.
me give me a second to do a little search on the other screen. Let me just check something out here. I was looking to see if I could save myself some time in editing by magnifying these screens as we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I might be able to do that right quick. And if not, I can still just edit it. Speaking of that, did you get a minute to look at any of the magnified screens in that last edit I
I
did?
watched probably the first 10 to 15 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it looked good.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. There is an effect inside Apple to do what I'm wanting to do, but I'm gonna have to play with it a little bit. So I'm not going to try to do it on this particular live stream, but I might do it for the next one.
Oh, come on, do it on the fly. Just in case something screws up.
Let's see. Well, hang on. Let me pull it up here and see what it looks like.
Thank
Bless you.
you.
Uh, okay, it kind of works. I can figure it out, I think, but we're not going to worry about trying to do it now. So,
Sounds good.
uh, well, kind of works. Yeah, but I think I'm just going to stick with what I was doing. Okay, so I got that turned off. So we're ready to go anytime you are.
We good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Turn all my other stuff off so I don't get distracted.
All right. Let me just go back to just us for a second. So
I'm assuming nobody's on.
nobody's on. So good morning, everybody. Brad's got his coffee. I got my coffee. Welcome back. We're going to finish up the discussion of the purchase and sale agreement for Tennessee Realtors, along with the associated documents. And I'll put a link for the repost in this in the bottom so you can go back and look at the first discussion. So, with that, take it away, Brad.
Good morning. All right, guys. If we remember from last time, we stopped off at section number 8, which is inspection. So let's pick up there. All right. So during our inspection time, any and all inspections that the buyer requires are to be done during that time period. Um, doesn't matter what it is, home inspection, if they need a well test, a septic inspection, anything you can think of is done during that time. It does say on line 283, the seller shall cause all utility services and any pool, spa, similar items to be operational, so the buyer may complete all inspections and tests under this agreement. When you show the property initially, if the utilities are off, don't wait till the day of or the day before the inspection to check with the listing agent to make sure the utilities are on. Do that several days before to give the seller time to turn it on, or if they're not, if they say absolutely not, then gives you a little bit of time to figure that one out. Second part, in the pink section says buyer agrees to indemnify seller from all acts of buyer inspectors, representatives in exercising buyer's right to under this purchase and sale agreement, buyer's obligations to indemnify survive termination of this agreement. So basically, if anybody that goes out on behalf of the buyer and they do any damage to the property, the buyer is sort of on the hook to make sure that that is taken care of. Whatever payment that entails, buyer has to take care of any type of repairs caused by damage from anybody that goes out for them. 289 through 291 is actually two parts. First part is buyer waives any objections to matters of purely cosmetic nature. A lot of the things that come out on the home inspection will be more so on the cosmetic end, could be more maintenance issues, smaller issues. I try to tell agents to be sure to talk to your clients about focusing on what I call the big three: the mechanical, the structural, and the electrical. If all of those are sound, the house is probably sound. A lot of the little stuff can be taken care of over time. Second part to that is buyer has no right to require repairs or alterations purely to meet current building codes unless required to do so by governmental authorities. In this case, your governmental authority would be your governmental appraisers. Anybody doing an appraisal for FHA, VA, any of the letter loans. If they say something needs to be brought up to code, then it needs to be brought up to code because the loan would be contingent upon that. Moving down to 299, wood destroying insect. You'll notice here that insect is highlighted. That's highlighted because several years ago that used to say organisms, which included mold and things on that scale. That is not included anymore. However, most of your termite inspectors, your appraisers are good at coming out of spaces and telling you if you've got mold. The true technical term is microbial growth. Whereas if they want it tested to see if it is actually mold, and then whatever type of mold it is, they can know how to treat it. But again, that would be something extra that they would need to do during that time. Because of the number of people we have coming in here from other areas, other climates, it's important if you hear the word mold, microbial growth, anything like that, that you let your buyers know immediately so they can decide what they want to do. We're a very moist climate. Most places around here, we've got some type of mold to some extent. But again, people coming from a drier climate may not have that issue and may want to go further on that. The wood destroying insect infestation inspection report is done at the buyer's expense. If any type of an active infestation is found, or if there's any type of damage from current infestation, past infestation, anything to do with that needs to be addressed. If they're asking the seller for any repairs, that's where that part would go. That's where they would ask for a termite treatment, ask for any type of repairs, anything like that. That would be, we'll get on down to that in the next section. Okay, so line 304, buyer's inspection and resolution. Line 304, that is the time period for our inspection period. I normally see 10 to 14 days on that. I have noticed a little bit of a trend. Some people are going as low as sometimes 5 to 7 days. No, it doesn't matter how much time you put in there. Just make sure that you've got time not only to do the inspections, you got to get the inspection reports back, and then the buyer has to have time to go over those reports to see exactly what it is that they want to, what they want their next option to be. So anything we talk about for the next section, we're just going to use a 10-day inspection period for our math. If your inspection period expires and the buyer has not done one of the things mentioned from 311 to 321, if that time period expires and they've not done one of these things, then they have essentially waived their right to the inspection period and the right to ask for anything. They're accepting it as is, and they're expected to move on. So that's a very important timeline to make sure that it doesn't expire before they do something. One of their options, first option they have, is to provide the buyer or the seller with a list of written specified objections and immediately terminate the agreement. All earnest money at that point is returned to the buyer. Notice it does not say that the seller has the right to request supporting documentation. Basically, whatever the buyer puts down, the buyer is able to get out for. There's nothing the seller can do to counteract that. The example that I use is a broken window. Let's say Ed sends me he has the buyers and he sends me a notification form that says that number 12 is checked and says that they're backing out because a window in one of the bedrooms is broken. So I call Ed and I say, Ed, here's the deal. I got your notification form. However, my seller fixed that window yesterday, so it's no longer broken. Sadly, that doesn't matter if the buyer is using the inspection report and says, hey, we want out because of the window was broken at one time. They're able to get out for that. Is what it is. Next option they have is number 13. That is, they can just accept it as is. They're not going to ask for any repairs. They're fine with whatever the report showed. Next option they have is on line number 319. This is what happens a lot of times. They furnish the seller with a written list of what they want to either have repaired and or replaced. That would include termite treatment, termite damage, things of that nature. Once that happens, we enter what's called the resolution period. So Ed, if we'll go to the next page.
Got a quick question for you.
Sure.
On the buyer terminating the contract because of the inspection, is there any definition as to how minor the defect can be, or
No.
like, so a broken switch plate even on a switch, or a
Yes.
broken plug? So
Yeah.
anything. Okay, that I just wanted to clear
Yeah.
that up. And
It's definitely in the buyer's favor. It's
Mhm.
the way most of the agreement is written. Um, some agents use this as a way to tell their people, "Hey, I know you got cold feet. If you want to back out, all you got to do is come up with a reason of something wrong on the off of the inspection report, and you get your earnest money back." All agents need to realize that one of the 21 ways to lose your license is coaching somebody on how to break a contract.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. If they've got cold feet, it is what it is. They've got options. You can show them what their options are, and then they can choose and go from there. But do not ever, ever, ever coach somebody into how they can break an agreement.
Okay.
And I
So,
forgot to say that part so I'm kind of glad you asked that question, because it jogged my memory that I didn't say that.
oh, very good. So next page.
All right, next page is 322 is asking for the amount of time for the resolution period. My suggestion is here is at the very least 3 to 4 days. That gives you time to, again, negotiate back and forth. So how this works is, again, Ed has the buyer in our fictitious transaction, and his buyer sends my sellers a repair replacement proposal. And that proposal, let's say they're asking for 20 items to be repaired. Well, my seller doesn't want to do those, so he replies with another repair replacement proposal, stating that he'll only fix 2 of those items. So we go back and forth with proposals until we narrow that down to where there's kind of like a happy medium. Notice on 327, it says the parties agree to negotiate repairs in good faith during the resolution period. We'll look at the repair replacement proposal in just a minute, but on the repair replacement proposal, it says that good faith negotiations are timely communicating one's position during the resolution period. So they have to go back and forth. If one party says, "You know what, I'm done. I'm not going to, I'm not playing this game anymore," they can be found in default because they're not acting in good faith to get through the resolution period. So once it starts, you have to keep going. Also, talking about once the resolution period starts, once you're in the resolution period, the inspection period is over. So if we go back to our 10 days that we had for our example, if you send the repair replacement proposal on day number 7, you no longer have those 3 extra days for your inspections. The inspection period is over. You've now moved into the resolution period. The buyer's right to send number 12 on the notification to terminate, that is gone, because that's not allowed in the resolution period. So if you're ready to go early, wonderful, go ahead and do it. Kind of help speed things up a little bit. But if you don't have all of your inspection reports back, there's still something you're waiting on, don't send that list too early. Okay, so during the resolution period, we'll use an example of 3 days for this. If that 3-day time period expires and the buyer and seller have not reached an agreement, meaning they're still going back and forth with the proposals, and let's say they have not done an extension, even if they do, let's say they do an extension for 5 days. Well, at the end of that 5 days, if they've still not made an agreement on what repairs are going to be done, what the seller's willing to do, what the buyer's willing to accept, they are at an impasse. They cannot move forward. So if the resolution period expires and they do not have an amendment getting themselves out of the resolution period, the transaction terminates and the buyer gets their earnest money back. That's a timeline you definitely want to keep up with, because again, once it expires, it expires. And no, a lot of agents that's been in the business for a while, they think once the resolution period expires, if they work something out, they can simply do an amendment that says resolution period extended X number of days, or whatever. Once this agreement is dead, it is dead. You cannot bring it back. So if there is an extension, it must be signed prior to the expiration of the resolution period. No ifs, ands, buts about it. If you're able to work it out after it's expired, you got to start over with a new purchase and sale, and everything has to be done new. That's not an issue if they're paying cash. But if there's a lender involved, lenders don't like it when roughly halfway through the process, there's a new contract that comes up. So again, watch your timelines on that very carefully. All right, Ed, let's flip. We're going to go past the purchase and sale. There's an example.
Sorry, I was muted. I was trying to get your attention,
Oh,
and I had my
I'm
mic
sorry.
muted.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Well, that's
The way the screen is set up today, you
yeah.
are in literally like the size of a postage stamp.
So that
So
doesn't mean a thing to you
yeah,
today,
that
huh?
even with
Okay,
my
no problem.
poor attention span, I did. If you were waving, I did not see it.
Yeah, no problem. So
All right.
I
So you got
wanted
a question?
to, yeah, I wanted
Okay.
to drill down on the days for the inspection period and the days for the resolution period.
Mm-hmm.
So the inspection period, the days roll. So if I understand that correctly, if the end of the inspection period occurs on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, then it rolls to the next business day. Is that correct?
That is correct. That we get to that towards the end of the agreement when we talk about the difference between days and dates.
And specifically, the reason I brought that up is you had written rolls in wherever it was.
That's for the
The
inspection period. Yes.
Yeah, rolls there at 304. You've written rolls in there, and that's great. So that's what caused me to ask the question. And 322, we do not have rolls. So does that end on the specified date, or
It
does
does
that
not.
roll
That
as
rolls
well?
also.
Okay,
That's a place I should have written rolls and I didn't.
okay, very
But
good.
yes,
So I
that works the same. That works the same way with depending on when that last
just
day
wanted to
lands.
clear that up in my
Yep.
brain. So
Yep.
rolls goes to the next business day if it's Saturday, Sunday, or a federal holiday.
Right. One thing, and you asking that question kind of reminded me of one question that I get. Remember, you don't add those two time periods together. If you got 10 days for inspection, you got 3 days for um, resolution period. Be very careful saying that you've got 13 days for inspection and resolution,
Hmm.
because again, if that 10 days expires and you've not done something to move into the resolution period, you've not canceled, um, or you've not canceled, then again, they're taking it as is. It's the same as sending number 13 saying, yep, we're good with it. So don't get into the trap of adding those two time periods together, because like I mentioned, if you send it on day 7, well, now you've technically got 13 days for your inspection and resolution period because of you moved into resolution early.
Hmm.
So again, be careful adding those two dates together. And contrary to what some people believe, weekends are counted in your count.
Hmm.
Says that very specifically towards the end of the agreement, that it is calendar days. It's not weekdays. And there
Hmm.
are some people who, for whatever reason, will write in that it's X number of business days. That confuses the entire agreement, because the wording towards the back of the agreement mentions that it's calendar days, and it just sort of messes things up. So,
Where do they put
don't.
business days in stipulations, or where?
Yeah, yeah, they'll put
Okay.
all time periods to be business days instead of that, and that's typically if they show it to an attorney prior to. It's just one of those changes that they feel needs to be made for whatever reason.
Okay.
But it does cause some issues at times.
Okay.
All right, so let's scroll. Let's jump forward to the repair replacement proposal. Ed, you're going to go to the end of the purchase and sale. You're going to go past that little example for special stipulations. Then the next form is the repair replacement proposal.
Okay. So these
Keep,
little yellow highlights in here aren't
yep,
of
keep
any
going.
major significance.
No, we're going back. We're just all right, right there. Okay, so this is the repair replacement proposal. This is what you would send during the resolution period. Whatever it is that the buyer is going to be asking for, this is the form that you would use. Notice line number 8 says, upon request, either party shall submit a copy of any supporting documentation or any portion thereof substantiating any item listed. So that means that if the seller needs more information, it's okay to do like a copy and paste of a portion of the inspection report to show them exactly what it is that the home inspector is saying that's wrong. So they do have a right to request that. Never send the full report. Remember, your buyers paid a good amount of money for that report. They do not just simply have to give it away. But again, you can do little snippets for that. And also, most of the time, when a problem or a repair is noted, it'll also say see photos 31 through 42. Because the inspector will take detailed photos of whatever the issue is. So if you're sending the description of what the seller or the inspector says is wrong, go ahead and include those photos just to make sure that they've got as much information as they can get to take, so that they're able to hopefully take care of the issue. When you're writing out your the items requested, always ask for licensed contractors to perform the major work. That's your structural, mechanical, and your electrical. Put that in the wording. Always ask for verification that they're licensed. Always ask for receipts for work done. Remember, if they're a licensed contractor, they have a license to fall back on the same way that we do. So again, whatever work they do, make sure you get a receipt for it, just in case there's any warranty issues, anything like that. Also, remind the listing agent that it says licensed. A lot of listing agents will have a handyman service that works for them. Handyman services are fantastic. They can do pretty much anything. But in my opinion, remember, licensed realtors are independent contractors. This is only my opinion. But in my opinion, anybody that's doing anything major, again, electrical, structural, mechanical, needs to be a licensed contractor, not just somebody that has knowledge of how things work. All right, the next highlight is down on line number 29. We're going to skip that, and Ed, roll to the next form. So now we're at the repair replacement amendment. So let's say Ed and I, remember Ed started with 20, Ed's buyer started with 20 items. My guy came back with 2. For ease of addition, we're just going to say that we settled on 10 of those items to be done. Ed is the one who sends me the final 10. My seller says, hey, that's wonderful. I'll accept that. So I'm going to call Ed and I'm going to say, Ed, my guy agrees, or my seller agrees to that. Do you want to write that up, or do you want me to? It honestly doesn't matter who writes the repair replacement amendment. It would be easier if Ed did, because Ed was the one who sent the last one that we accepted. But Ed may be busy. Ed may not be able to do it right then. So it's okay if I do it. Regardless of who does it, make sure that you read it very, very detailed, so that just to make sure nothing has changed that could favor one side over the other. But again, doesn't really matter who fills it out. Once this happens, you got number 24 here that says seller agrees to complete the above matters X number of days prior to closing, which time buyer and or buyer inspectors representatives shall have the right to re-inspect and confirm that such matters have been completed. Such inspection shall not limit buyer's right to conduct a final inspection. Never wait till your final walkthrough to go out and make sure that whatever is supposed to have been repaired or replaced has been done. My recommendation is do this at least 5 days prior to closing, so that if there's something that's not been done properly, not been done at all, or something that the buyer's just not happy with the way that it was done, you've got time to work on that. Also, the seller not doing what they've agreed to in the repair replacement amendment is a reason for a breach of contract. So if you go out X number of days before and they've not done these things, the buyer does have the right to terminate at that point, because again, the seller is in breach.
Would we send a notice to the listing agent that we're going out to do the
Oh, absolutely.
inspection?
You would schedule this the same. You would schedule this the same as you would any other type of viewing. Uh,
But the question specifically was, would we use the notice form?
I would just make a phone call and say, hey, per the
Roger
purchase
that.
and sale, we're,
Okay, so
this
the,
date is 5 days prior to closing. We need to go out and do an inspection for repair replacements.
okay, so just to nail down my idiot brain, there is not a box on the notification form for this.
No,
Okay, that
no.
that was my stupid question.
I
So,
that's your one for the day.
okay,
All right,
good enough.
let's go back up to page. What
Just
page?
curious. I was away from the computer a second trying to see what the hell was going on outside. There's a big ass concrete truck out that next door neighbor pouring shit. I was wondering if you heard any audio from that because it was annoying as
I did
hell
not.
coming this in.
No,
Okay,
I did not.
excellent. That means I won't have to edit it out. So
Yep.
we're ready to go back to which page?
We're on page number 7.
Okay. You want to go back to page 7?
Preferably. Nice. Okay, next section or part we're going to look at is line number 339. This says buyer waives option to request items to be repaired and or replaced. Above, there shall be no resolution period, but the buyer retains the right to perform buyer's inspections, timely furnish the seller with a list of written specified objections, immediately terminate, or accept the property as is. Some agents feel that this is wonderful because they think it strengthens the offer. Because the seller can look at it and say, okay, wonderful. They're going to do an inspection, but they're not going to ask for any repairs. So we don't have to worry about, going back and forth, trying to figure out how much we're going to do. They're either going to take it or they're going to leave it. Other agents have an opinion of it that says that you're taking away the party's abilities to negotiate, because the buyer may actually send notification number 12 and say, hey, we're terminating because of this. That may be something that the seller was perfectly willing to do if asked. Each agent kind of forms their own opinion on this section, whether they like it or not, but this is an option where, again, the buyer says, hey, we're possibly going to do inspections, but we're not going to ask for any repairs. It's either going to be a pass or a fail. Again, some agents love this, some agents don't. Talk with your client and see which one they want to do. Also, back up on the resolution period, one thing I missed. During the resolution period, if for any reason the buyer gets a sense that the seller is not necessarily being that cooperative and is not going to agree to anything, and the buyer wants the house, at any point during the resolution period, the buyer can send number 13 on the notification form and take it as is. This was really needed several years ago when we had multiple offers on pretty much every listing that was out there. What would happen was the seller would accept an offer, and then a backup offer would come in that was, in a lot of cases, better than the current offer. So the seller would during the resolution period would play the game, going back and forth with proposals, but they just wouldn't agree to anything. So they would let the resolution period expire, which terminated the agreement, and then they would move on to the backup offer. A lot of people that really wanted a house lost the house because, again, of that tactic. So they did make this change where at any point during the resolution period, if the buyer decides, hey, we're good with whatever the repairs are, we just want to move forward because we want the house, they can send 13, take it as is, and then again, everybody moves forward.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I said, okay.
All right. Next, 343, waiver of all inspections. Guys, this one scares me to death. When you're waiving inspections, you're taking the seller at their word that everything that there's either nothing wrong with the house or anything that's wrong with it has been disclosed. Seller may not know of everything that's wrong. That's what our home inspections are for. Just know, if you're waiving inspections, that includes your wood destroying insect report. If they're getting a loan, a lot of times the lender will require a term out letter for the property. So again, if your buyer is getting a loan and they want to waive inspections, check with the lender first, because they're giving up the right to do an inspection. So just because the lender says they've got to have one, the seller does not have to grant that request to let them in to do that inspection, because they've waived the right for those. All right, completion of repairs. This is a newer section that's been added. Biggest thing here: in the event repairs have not been completed by the established deadline, seller shall be considered in default of this agreement, and buyer may terminate via the notification form. Upon termination, earnest money is returned to the buyer. So the repairs and or replacements that they're supposed to do, that's not just, those aren't just suggestions. Those are things that are now part of the agreement. Those must be done, must be satisfactory to the buyer in order to move forward. All right, final inspection. This has changed a little bit. Final inspection now is only for one thing. It's only to confirm the property is in the same or better condition as it was on the binding agreement date, normal wear and tear expected. Prior to this year, it was also the last time that the seller or that the buyer was able to make sure that any requested repairs and or replacements had been done. Hopefully you're not waiting till the final walkthrough to do that. It does mention in that highlighted section or down below, let's see, closing, sorry, 349, in the event repairs have not been completed. Hang on, I'm getting lost here.
I'll be sure to leave this in the final edit.
Oh, please do. Please do. Yeah, let's start back out. Let me get my bearings, because
Okay, while you're getting your bearings, I'm going to go get rid of some coffee.
yeah,
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, try the arrow keys on the left and right arrow key on your keyboard. See if that'll move that for you.
It does. Well, look at that. I'm a scroller.
It's not moving it on mine.
Is it not? It is on mine. No. I'm sorry, Ed. I'm not looking at your page.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
one pulled up side by side.
Hang on. Let me see if I can, before I go dump my coffee, let me see if I can set you up so that you can do it.
It's too small. I can't see it.
Okay, you can't even see it.
I've got your screen, our screen pushed over, and I've got a bigger version of my note in front.
Well, you got 4 dadgum screens on your computer. What's the problem?
Yeah, but I don't want to turn
fucking
sideways.
Windows machine. Is that the problem?
That's not my best profile.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back.
All right.
Buy a Macintosh while I'm gone.
No, I need something that works.
Okay, I'm back.
No, all right.
What page do we need now?
We're still on page number 7.
Okay. There is a way I can set it up for you to scroll, by the way, because I do it with Lisa Step over at the mortgage company I do some live streams with, but I forgot what I did to set her up. So anyway, carry on.
It's all good. All right, so now we're on section number 9, completion of repairs. First part basically says if on your repair replacement amendment, if you don't say how many days prior to closing that the repairs need to be done, then that particular inspection is done during the final walkthrough. But remember, please don't do that. Also, if 349, in the event repairs have not been completed by the deadline, seller shall be considered in default, and the buyer may terminate via the notification form or written equivalent. Upon termination, earnest money is returned to the buyer. Final inspection. Final inspection is typically either the day of or one day prior to closing. The final inspection is only for one thing. That's to confirm the property is in the same or better condition as it was on the binding agreement date. Normal wear and tear expected. Remember, it's not a time to find anything new. Once the seller's furniture and all their belongings are out of the house, the home obviously looks different. Things may be more noticeable. If something was missed during the inspection period, again, it's not the time to start asking for, hey, well, we didn't notice this, we need this fixed. Nope, that time has passed. Just remember that.
Okay, question on the
Sure.
written day or the days. I always put 1 day. And so that to me means 1 day before closing. But also, if I say, for example, put 2 days, that would be 2 days before closing, or I could do it 1 day before closing, or I could do it day of closing. Am I interpreting that
Yeah.
correctly? Or
within X number of days. Yes.
right. So
Yep.
if I put 1 or 2 days, that's days before closing, but I can do it anytime between then and the day of closing.
Correct.
Okay, that had always been kind of a little gray
Yeah.
area in my mind, and I've always
I've,
used
I've
one
seen
day.
some write it 0 to 1 days. The way
I
I
just,
interpret 0 is they just want to do it the day of, which typically means
yeah,
they're either going to do a early afternoon, late afternoon closing, and then they want to do their final walkthrough the day of closing.
yeah, okay, yeah. I think 1 day is appropriate, but that means you could wait till the morning of closing if you
Sure.
wanted to. But I think the day before is the time to do it.
Yep.
Carry on.
All right. Buyers in, sorry,
Can
three.
I interrupt you
Absolutely.
and give it a second before you start back up?
Okay.
And you do what you want to, but you kind of slumped over. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to present
No, you're
yourself.
right. I
So
got comfortable.
yeah, well, don't get
My
comfortable.
when I do our monthly meetings or Zoom meetings, this
I understand.
is that's my normal. So
Well,
yeah,
now
setting
see,
up this.
if you had yourself, and I know apparently you don't have the ability to really see me that well, but if you had a Mac, you could do whatever you want to with your camera, including zooming in,
My
zooming out.
camera, my camera is setting on top of my top screen on the left, and if I put it in the middle, it won't fit because of the way the screens are.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's too far away.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably zoom it a little bit, but yeah, I'm not at. It's kind of the best place I could put it. Um, so it is what it is.
Sure. Okay. Carry on. Just give me a pause for an edit and then pick
Okay.
right up wherever you were.
Okay, the last part on the final inspections, we've got line 356. Closing of this sale constitutes acceptance of the property in its condition at the time of closing unless otherwise mutually agreed upon in writing. So once it closes, whatever the buyer discovers afterwards, they've accepted the property. I will say one of the biggest reasons that buyers and sellers end up in court after closing is because of either something was misrepresented as far as the condition of the property or something wasn't disclosed. But Anyway, we won't get into too many legal issues. All right, moving on to line 358, buyer's additional due diligence. It says if any of the above matters below are of concern to the buyer should address the current concerns by specific contingency in the special stipulation section of this agreement. So we have a form called RF 707. 707 is the title of it is additional contract language, and it's phrases and clauses that you can cut and paste to assist you in writing your special stipulations. They're written by the same people who do the same attorneys who do our forms. It's the proper way to write particular things. 707 is kind of a hodgepodge, a catch-all of a lot of different clauses that you may run into. These specific ones are also on 707 if they're of concern. A and B talks about survey, flood certification, and insurability of the property. On the property condition disclosure, section C, item number 11, asks specifically if flood insurance is required for the property. If flood insurance is required, just know that flood insurance is very expensive, and your buyer has a maximum monthly payment that they can make. That includes the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, all that good stuff. If flood insurance, the cost of flood insurance puts them over that max, obviously the loan is going to be declined because they can't afford the monthly payment. However, if it gets the buyer into an uncomfortable position, meaning it doesn't go over, but it's a number that they, even though on paper they can afford it, they just don't want to do, give them an out as a just in case for flood insurance. Because again, if it doesn't go over, then again, the loan's not going to be denied. They're expected to move forward. So again, if it gets them into an uncomfortable range on their monthly payment, again, give them a way out, again, for flood insurance. If they're coming into this area from a place or they're not used to well water septic systems, if they want an inspection, by all means, that can be written in to again give the right to that, which would be done during the inspection period, but also giving them a way out depending on what the results were. Biggest one to remember is on the next page, line 376, title exceptions. If your buyers are purchasing a home that's in a condo association, homeowners association, anything where there's a set of restrictions, make sure that the buyer reads those restrictions and is okay with everything in there. This says, it says at closing, general warranty deed may be subject to the subdivision and or condominium declarations, covenants, restrictions, and easements of records, which may impose obligations and may limit the use of the property by buyers. So make sure that they're okay with everything that's in there, because there may be a restriction that is going to affect the buyer. Let's say that, for ease of example, let's say they've got a boat that they need to store outside, or they've got a motor home. A lot of subdivision restrictions are restricted against that, of having a boat parked outside or a motor home. So again, you don't want them stuck in a subdivision where they can't use the property as they want. If prior to making an offer, the restrictions are not available, make sure to make it contingent in special stipulations that the transaction is contingent upon the buyer approving condo HOA restrictions, covenants restrictions, within X number of days of the binding date. Just to make sure they don't get stuck with something that they can't use the way they want to.
Okay, question.
Sure.
From my position as a representative for the buyer, it's my duty to give them the restrictions that exist on the property and make sure they read it, or at least tell them to read it. I don't have to stand over them and make sure they read it. But how do I document? Can I just do that with an email? Say,
Sure.
email the stuff to them, read this, and reply saying that you accept, or how would you do that?
Are we talking about before the offer
Before
is
the
accepted
offer,
or after?
or either way.
Well,
I just
before,
need to document
if it's
that
before
they,
the offer and they've got an issue with it, they're probably not going to do the offer.
right.
But if the offer is has already been accepted, meaning we're bound, we're moving forward. If that's when they get the restrictions, if they have a problem with it, then they can exercise that contingency and terminate the agreement based on what they read.
And maybe I'm trying to split a hair here, but just looking to protect myself from an errors and omissions standpoint, how do I get verification from them that they do accept the restrictions?
You could just do an email. I mean, just have them reply to an email would be fine.
Okay, so good enough. Carry on.
All right, next highlighted on this page is line 406. This is just a new, because of the settlement, this is new, something new that's been added. Broker compensation is not set by law, and compensation rates are fully negotiable. Next section down, home protection plan. I don't cover those in this class. There are plenty of vendors that can discuss this with you. It's just something that I don't touch. Bottom of the page, non-assignability. This purchase and sale agreement shall not be assignable by the buyer without prior written consent by the seller. Prior to this year, purchase and sale was assignable at any time by the buyer, and the seller did not have to approve. They've just now added where it does have to be approved.
Was that added because of a lot of wholesalers, or?
I would assume yes.
Okay.
But I'm not sure why they chose to do that.
Roger that.
All right, next page. Okay, so this is where we're talking about our binding agreement date, acknowledgement of receipt. Line 435 says the parties hereby authorize either licensee to insert the time and date of receipt of notice of acceptance of the final offer. Foregoing time and date shall be referred to for convenience as the binding agreement date for purposes of establishing performance deadlines. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions from agents who feel that if we haven't quote unquote bound the agreement, we don't have a fully executed agreement. That's wrong. Once the buyer and seller come to an agreement, they've had a meeting of the minds, then everybody has signed. It's a done deal. Whether the acknowledgement of receipt is filled in or not, they have a contract. As long as the final offer, let's say that Ed's buyer sent it to my seller signs it, I send it back to Ed. Once I send it back to Ed, we have a done deal because both parties are in receipt of fully executed agreements. We're done. We're moving forward. What the acknowledgement of receipt, the line on the back page of the agreement, what that is for is that is just an easy way for us to look and see when our timelines start. Binding agreement date is always day 0. The following day starts the majority of our timelines. It starts the 3-day loan obligation, the 14-day loan obligation, the time for the earnest money, the inspection period. Let's see what else. There's probably 1 or 2 more in there, but again, that is the start of the majority of our time periods. So again, don't get hung up that we as realtors have so much power that we can control when this thing is fully executed or not. We don't have that kind of power. So Ed sends me the agreement, my seller sign it, I send it back to him, that he is in receipt of acceptance of the final offer. So typically it's up to him to fill in acknowledgement of receipt on the day that he receives it and then send it back to me. We both then know what our binding agreement date is. If I send it to Ed, I'm going to be a good agent because I believe in communication. I'm going to call Ed and I'm going to say, hey, Ed, I just sent you the accepted agreement. Do you want to bind that and send it back? And will you bind that and send it back to me? If Ed says, you know what, I've got showings the rest of the day, let me do it when I get home. Perfect, not an issue. If it gets 5, 6 o'clock, I'm going to call Ed and say, hey, Ed, you going to bind that today? And if he says, yep, eating dinner right now, I'll get to it. If it gets time for me to go to bed and I've still not received it back from Ed with the binding agreement date, then I'm going to go ahead and put my signature on that and send it to Ed, because remember, the binding agreement date is day 0. So if Ed doesn't sign it until tomorrow, that means tomorrow is day 0 and the following day is day 1. That's never an issue until one of the timelines is ending and it affects one party in a negative way, because then the argument comes up, well, we signed it on this day. Well, no, but it wasn't bound on this day. So whatever the day is that everybody signs it, it's very important. That's the day that it is bound, regardless of which party does it.
And I agree totally with everything you said. And in fact, the let's just skip down for a second. The acknowledgement of receipt on 540. Uh, Whoever gets the final accepted offer should bind it on
Right.
line 540. I have any number of times had the other agent just go ahead and sign it and then send it back to me with no communications. That's fine. I don't care really. But the way it reads, if I'm the one that receives the final acceptance, then I should bind it and send it back to them, or
Correct.
vice versa. But
Correct.
I've had a number of occasions where they just go ahead and bind it and send it back to me. So,
That's not the way it should be done, because it's different than what the purchase and sale says. I, I personally, as long as it's done in good faith, meaning one's not doing it just to be a whatever, a control freak, or however you want to look at that, because some agents do.
mhm.
Um, I, I I don't necessarily think that's fine, because again, this says whoever's in receipt of the final offer should bind it. But again, at that point, it's still bound that day.
Right.
Um, some agents have a problem with it if whoever the returning agent goes ahead and binds it. Some agents will get bent out of shape over that. I'm not really sure why, but again, we have no power. We're just hopefully good at negotiating and lining
Mhm.
things up to make sure we go to closing. But yeah, I don't, I mean, I know that's a practice. Again, it's not something I necessarily agree with, because it's different than what the purchase and sale says. But if it happens, it is what it is. Don't, no reason
And
to
it
get bent
does
out.
happen. And that was my point.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
don't let it bother me, but it's not, as you say, it is not the way the agreement reads.
Correct.
Anyway,
Correct.
carry on.
All right. So here, the next section is terminology. This is where we talk about our days versus dates. Um, so this says, line 448, in the event of a performance deadline, closing date other than, so that here's meaning except closing date, date of possession, completion of repair deadlines, and offer expiration dates. Any Anything else other than those four time periods, if the ending date lands on a Saturday, Sunday, or a federal holiday, notice I said federal holiday, then it automatically, the day ending date automatically rolls to the next business day. If you think about the four times that are mentioned, those are dates. You've got your closing date. You've got your date of possession. Those are hard dates. You've got your offer expiration date, another hard date. The only uh, difference is your completion or repair deadline. If you think back to the repair replacement amendment we looked at, we talked about doing 5 days prior to the closing date for that final inspection, or for the final inspection to make sure that the repair replacements have been done. So that is listed as days. However, it's still a hard date because it's 5 days before the closing date. So no matter where the closing date moves, that date still kind of moves with it because it's 5 days prior to closing. So again, every place that's a hard date, that does not roll. Everything else, yeah, again, Saturday, Sunday, federal holiday, it rolls forward. Be sure to look up, it's mentioned on 452, 5 US Code 6103A. That is the list of federal holidays. Not every holiday that we celebrate or that we observe in Tennessee is listed as a federal holiday. So again, be careful when you're trying to, if you're trying to judge, make sure that your argument is truly a holiday.
Okay, now I'll have to look this code up, but I assume Thanksgiving, for example, is a Thursday holiday. I
Yes,
assume the federal code also defines as Friday. So Thursday and Friday are both federal holidays, or only Thursday? Or
I
do
don't
you
know.
know?
I,
Well,
I, I do not
Brad,
know.
I am crushed. I thought you were all knowing.
Nope. I just
Well,
know the code and know that it's that anything that's listed as a federal holiday is applies
okay,
to
so
it.
we'll have to look up Thanksgiving to see if it qualifies for the
That works. I
Friday.
know that's a concern.
Okay.
All right,
So
notices.
I thought you were Karnak. You remember Karnak the
I do
Magnificent?
remember Karnak.
Okay,
Yeah.
the old mighty one.
All right,
Carry on.
notices. Notices can be given in person by prepaid overnight delivery service, fax. Yes, some people still fax. By U.S. Postal Service, and email. Notice it does not say text. However, guys, don't fall into the trap of being a bad agent and not being good at communication. There are so many agents that are horrible at communicating, and other agents hate working with them because they can't get a return phone call, they can't get a return email. Don't be that agent. But back to notices, if I email Ed a document or an offer or something like that, I'm going to follow up with a phone call or a text just to make
Mm.
sure that he receives it. Um, Again, there I have agents who I've been called by other agents that says, hey, I turned in an offer to your agent and they never responded to me. And literally, they sent an email, and my agent found it in junk, but they were given no notice, no phone call, no nothing from that other agent that they actually sent it. Don't be that person. If you send somebody an offer, do your best interest of your client and follow up with that agent to make sure that they've received it. Okay,
Okay.
moving on to Ed. You have a question?
No, sir.
All right. Moving on to exhibits and addenda, don't feel like you have to have anything in here. But if for whatever reason your buyer definitely needs to move in early, you would use a temporary occupancy agreement. If the listing agent lets you know up front the seller will not move out prior to a particular date. Best example I've got for that one is somebody who puts their home on the market in the spring, and they do a temporary occupancy agreement to a few days after school is out because they don't want to disrupt the child before school is out. That one I see occasionally. So again, if you're provided with a temporary occupancy agreement up front where the seller says we're not moving until this date and your buyer's okay with that, you could include that in there as well. If your sell if the offer is for a piece of a home and then a vacant lot next to it, and it's two separate parcels, you can do this on one agreement. Where you make the house as the main address, and then you put, to include this parcel number. You can include the tax records with this. Makes it a little easier on the title company. Also, for exhibits and addenda, never add the MLS brief. Remember, the bottom says information deemed reliable but not guaranteed. Don't put a non-guaranteed document into this type of contract. A few things on special stipulations. Remember, we've got RF 707 as a help for this. But when you're writing them, be specific, extremely clear what you're asking. When possible, answer the following: who, what, where, when, how, whose cost and consequences if not fulfilled. Not all special stipulations that you'll write will need to answer all of those questions. But again, try to do that best possible just so that you don't leave anything open. My suggestion is when you're writing a special stipulation, have somebody, be it a friend, a spouse, significant other, whatever, that is unfamiliar with the real estate business. Have them read your special stipulation. And if they can't tell you exactly what it is you're asking for, you need to write it simpler. Because subject to interpretation is a really kind way of saying this could really turn into a big argument and get nasty. So again, make sure there's nothing that's open to interpretation. Make it crystal clear. Also, remember, if you're writing a clause and we have a form that covers that clause, that can be considered the unlicensed practice of law. So be very careful trying to come up with your own clauses, because if, again, RF 707 covers the majority of things that could happen. But also, let's say it's a first right of refusal and you decide to write your own wording for the first right of refusal in there. Well, we have a form for a first right of refusal that covers all the bases. And by that, that's the form you should be using. Remember, guys, we are not attorneys. We are nothing more than people who fill in the blanks and try to navigate everybody towards closing. A few suggestions. Put in that the property is to be left broom clean and free of all debris, lawn to be mowed X number of days prior to closing. A lot of times, a seller, as they're getting close to moving, they'll have their lawn service ended. Um, Again, the final inspection is to make sure that the property is in the same or better condition, normal wear and tear expected. The argument on that comes, is knee-high grass the same or better condition? Some view that as no, that it needs to be mowed. So again, just to try to cut off any type of an issue, because I've had agents that literally have to go out and mow the grass because either their seller moved out of town or they refuse to do it because it's closing, whatever. Again, just to keep everybody happy and to have closing go smoothly, I recommend putting that in. Also, in my opinion, the property needs to be vacant at the time of final inspection. For whatever reason, that used to happen. That was very common. Nowadays, it seems like it's hit or miss as to whether the seller is fully out. But in my opinion, the buyer needs to see the full home with none of the seller's belongings in there, so that they can see every square inch of it. Again, my opinion. Do it how you want to. Notes for the purchase and sale: never cross anything out. Don't use the phrase "to be determined." Don't use "not applicable." Always ask your broker if you have any questions, no matter how small. I had an incident yesterday where somebody just did not do a clause very well and really opened their client up for some issues where a phone call could have easily taken care of that. Don't hesitate to call your broker if you have a question, especially with wording or something like that. Line 515 is time limit of the offer. This offer may be withdrawn at any time before acceptance with notice. That would be number 16 on the notification form and number 37 for the sellers. Line 516 is the time of acceptance, the time limit of the offer. Not filling that line out is number 9 of the 21 ways to lose your license. So that is a blank you definitely want to fill in. Because again, you cannot give a contract that does not specify an ending date. Let's see. Yes.
You have had, or at least it appeared to me, you've had some folks in your office talking a little loud. I don't know.
No, you got it. Yep, my morning crew came in, and sometimes they get chatty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the offer. So buyer signed. The seller has the option to either accept, counter, or reject the offer. If the seller accepts it, line 543 is for the acknowledgement of the receipt. That establishes what our binding agreement date is and starts our timelines. Should the seller choose to counter, you would check counter, seller would sign, and then we're going to add, let's scroll down to almost.
Quick question.
Yes.
And obviously I'll edit this out, but I'm wondering, did they change line numbers on you? Because you said line 543 and it's line 540. So I'm wondering if last year's form, line 543, was acknowledgement of receipt.
I mean, we're looking at the same.
Yeah, but you said 543, not 540. That's why I was wondering if if your mind was remembering last year's.
If you'll notice, my readers are here.
Okay.
It's 540.
Yeah, it is. But you understand my point. I was asking if you were remembering last year's number or not.
Yeah, no, that was it. It looks, honestly, Ed, I'm looking at it, and one, it's moving, but two, that 0 at times looks like a 3.
Roger that. So do we need to look at this special stipulations page or not?
No, that's just I don't cover that. It's just
okay. Repair replacement we've already looked at.
I'm
just going to mention in the edit, I'm just going to leave this special stipulations page up here for just a little bit, that they can pause the video on and screenshot it if they want to. Okay. What do you need next?
Keep going. Go to the counter offer. One more. There we go. Okay. So should the seller decide to counter something, doesn't matter, whatever they don't agree with in the purchase and sale agreement, they want to counter back and change it. this is where they do that. So number one says, where's it coming from? Typically, seller to buyer is the first one. Um, you tell who your sellers are, who the buyers are, what address it is. Line number 4, it says undersigned, agree, and accept the purchase and sale agreement with an offer date of. So what goes in that blank is the original day that, or the original date that the buyer signed the purchase and sale. A lot of times it's the same day. It may be 2 or 3 days later, depending on how many counteroffers have been going. But that's the date that the buyer originally signed the purchase and sale. So the big blank section is for whatever it is that they want to change, or to change from whatever the original offer was. Number 20, all other terms and conditions of the original attached purchase and sale agreement are acceptable. All terms and conditions proposed in previous counteroffers, if any, are not included in this counteroffer unless reinstated herein. So what that means is, here's my visual. We have our purchase and sale agreement here. This is the main meat of our transaction. We end up with 5 counteroffers before counteroffer number 5 is accepted. So our actual transaction is going to be our purchase and sale agreement and counteroffer number 5. Counteroffers 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's as if they never existed. They never need to be discussed or talked about, because whatever was in them that didn't make it to the final does not matter. So if your buyer or seller wants something, it needs to be listed in each counteroffer. If it doesn't make it to the final one, then it doesn't count. We still have the offer. This offer may be withdrawn at any time before acceptance. The way the notification reads, it says that either the buyer or the seller hereby withdraws all offers and counteroffers. So it covers offers and counteroffers. Line number 29 is time limit of the offer. Again, number 9 of the 21 ways to lose your license. Make sure you fill that out. So whoever the countering party is signs on line number 31. Who, again, let's say that this is counteroffer number 5. They would click accepted, and then whoever that party is signs that they've accepted it. This is where, if this happens, this is where the acknowledgement of receipt would be filled out by whoever the final agent is. You would not go back to the purchase and sale and do that. You would do it on this one, because if you think about it, this would really be the back page to our purchase and sale agreement with counteroffer number 5. That would be our full transaction. All right, that's it. As unexciting as this is, the next 4 pages are the notification form. Remember, I've got each part through the purchase and sale agreement noted as to where that it can be found on the notification form. Become familiar with this form. To me, it's a very important form, and it's a very underused form, especially by listing agents. All right, Ed, do you have any questions?
No, I was just scrolling through the notification form slowly so people could screenshot it if they wanted to. Of course, they can download it as well. No, that pretty well covers it.
Okay.
I would request, I'm not sure how it works. Can you leave your stream running for a little while after we just leave the window running that you have open,
Yeah.
because it downloads a local recording to your computer and then turns around and uploads it to StreamYard for me to have
Uh-huh.
a good high quality copy of your video. So I'm not really sure how long that takes. I don't think it's a big long time, but just leave this window open for like 30 minutes or something like that. Should be more than enough time.
How
And
about how about I move you?
yeah, you can minimize the window. You can move it wherever you want to, as long as you don't close it on your computer.
Okay. Yep, I'll move you to one of my underused screens.
Okay.
And
The other thing that came to my brain is I know that um, oh hell, the 21 ways to lose your license is usually uh, I hate it when I get a fucking mental block on a name.
Kent,
Kent, thank you. Kent usually covers that. Would you like to do a stream
no,
on that?
I hate
Okay.
that. So 21 ways. There's actually 20 ways that we can lose our license because number 21 applies to timeshare.
Okay.
Um, if nobody asks questions, the 21 ways class takes 25 minutes.
Hmm.
It's a horribly boring class. Um, Again, I do good to stretch it to 30 minutes if nobody's asking questions. It's just, yeah, and that's why I let Kent teach it every so often. I used to try to do it about every 4 or 5 months.
Uh-huh.
And it is, I mean, if I had any to pull out, I would pull it out during that because it's a terrible class.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
yeah, no,
maybe
I'd
I'll
rather
talk
not
you.
do that one.
Maybe I'll talk you into it one of these days, just
It's
one
possible.
time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
possible.
but in any case, I think this came out good, and I think I am going to look into ways to magnify the screen while we're actually live. But I think I'll probably continue to edit it the way I've been doing, and just highlight the sections that need to be highlighted as you talk about them.
Right. Nope, I got you.
So that's about it.
All right,
I'm
sir.
going to
I am
end the
going
stream
to,
now and just let it run.
yeah,
Like I say, after 30 minutes or so,